lives in your blood. When your killing's as easy as breathing. Live for nothing or die for something. Your call.
He is a legend of war. You know his name. Love.
was told it might be possible to
Burma's a war zone.
alternative.
I can't help you out.
Please, that will help change.
What happened?
Well, no one knows.
He wanted peace, a broken bar, but war keeps finding him. When innocent lives are caught in the crossfire, one man will unleash the fury of a soldier who knows no surrender. This is Rambo, 2008, only on M Cinema Reviews. A joint team of MI6 agents and CIA officers, led by Senior Agent Noel Bissett, are in Bu-8+- Spain, during the La Tomatina festival, chasing Russian arms dealer Viktor Gradov. Gradov outsmarts them, and his men kill Bissett's team and acquire a link to Echelon, the global surveillance program used by the Anglosphere intelligence alliance Five Eyes. Meanwhile, Sam Clarke, the UK Prime Minister, receives a state visit from the newly elected United States President Will Derringer, a former action movie star. The two do not get along, and a public argument breaks out in front of the press, after which their respective aides Quincy and Bradshaw convince them to fly to the upcoming NATO summit in Trieste together aboard Air Force One to present a united front to the world. During the flight, Air Force One is shot down by Gradov's terrorists. Clarke and Derringer escape using parachutes but are stranded in Belarus and presumed dead by the rest of the world. Realizing that someone in their inner circles has betrayed them to Gradov, the two hitch a ride to Poland with a friendly Belarusian lady and seek shelter with CIA officer Marty Kummer in Warsaw. Gradov's men, led by assassins Sasha and Olga, attack the hideout, and Kummer is shot in the head. Clarke and Derringer escape with the help of Bissett, who survived Gradov's attack in Spain. Bissett tells Clarke and Derringer that the NATO summit has been derailed due to Gradov's hacker Hammond breaking into Echelon and leaking national security files to the public. Derringer also learns that Clarke and Bissett were in a relationship prior to Clarke running for office. The three embark for the summit in Italy by train, where they are attacked by another of Gradov's assassins. Hammond, tired of being forced to work for Gradov, kills the assassin but is mortally wounded. He instructs the trio to go to his former office in Zadar, Croatia, to find out who betrayed them. They locate old chat logs that implicate Derringer's aide Bradshaw. They are again attacked by Gradov's assassins, and Clarke is seemingly killed in an explosion. Derringer and Bissett arrive in Trieste for the summit, where they learn that the real traitor is Vice President Elizabeth Kirk, who implicated Bradshaw as a false trail. The assassins working for her and Gradov chase Derringer and Bissett through Trieste. The two are saved by Clarke, who survived the explosion. Olga is killed when her grenade launcher goes off by accident during the chase, and the trio arrives at the summit in time to prevent the dissolution of NATO at the hands of Kirk. Derringer confronts her, but she is shot and killed by Gradov, whose assassins assault the summit. Bissett fights and kills Sasha, while Clark and Derringer pursue Gradov, killing him when the latter throws a statue at his helicopter, causing it to crash. 2 months later, the relationships within NATO have been repaired, and Clark and Derringer have become close friends. In a post-credits scene, Comer is revealed to have survived the attack in Warsaw due to a metal plate in his head and is approached by Bissett while attempting to pick up women at a bar. During the Saffron Revolution in Burma, ruthless SPDC officer Major Patitent leads his army in a brutal campaign raiding villages, slaughtering civilians, conscripting boys, and enslaving women. Meanwhile, 2 decades after his mission in Afghanistan, Vietnam War veteran John Rambo lives in Thailand, working as a snake catcher and boatman. One missionary Dr. Michael Burnett and his fiancée Tilda copyrightee Sarah Miller ask him to ferry their group upriver to deliver aid to a Karen village. Rambo reluctantly agrees. On the journey, pirates demand Sarah in exchange for safe passage, forcing Rambo to kill them. The missionaries reach the village but are soon attacked by tense forces, who torch it and take survivors prisoner. The missionaries' pastor later pleads with Rambo to guide a team of mercenaries on a rescue mission. Despite initial friction with the team's leader, Lewis, Rambo joins the operation. With help from Karen Rebel Mind, they reach the massacre site, witnessing prisoners forced to run across minefields for sport. Rambo intervenes, kills the soldiers, and frees the captives. That night, they infiltrate Tint's camp, rescuing more survivors. The next day, Tint's forces ambush them, injuring Lewis and capturing most of the group. Only Rambo, Sarah, and Sniper Schoolboy remain free. Before the firing squad can execute the captives, Rambo storms in with a mounted machine gun, turning the tide. Karen rebels join the battle, overwhelming Tint's troops in a bloody fight that claims the lives of mercenaries and Juan Diaz. As Tint tries to flee, Rambo intercepts and kills him with his machete. In the aftermath, moved by Sir's words, Rambo returns to the United States to visit his father in Bowie, Arizona. The Comprehensive Guide to Rambo, 2008, casting, a behind-the-scenes look at Stallone's final Rambo film introduction, the return of a legendary character. When Sylvester Stallone announced his return to the role of John Rambo in 2008, it marked the end of a 20-year hiatus for one of cinema's most iconic action heroes. The fourth installment in the Rambo franchise, simply titled Rambo, would prove to be a complex casting endeavor that required balancing established star power with fresh faces, international talent, and the unique demands of a production filmed in the challenging conditions of Southeast Asia. The casting process for Rambo, 2008, was far more intricate than many realized at the time. Stallone, who not only starred in but also directed and co-wrote the film, faced the monumental task of assembling a cast that could support his return to the character while bringing authenticity to a story set in the politically turbulent region of Myanmar, Burma. The film's casting decisions would ultimately reflect both the evolution of the action genre and the specific storytelling requirements of a Rambo film that aimed to address real-world humanitarian crises. This comprehensive examination of the casting process reveals the meticulous planning, creative decisions, and logistical challenges that went into bringing together the ensemble that would support Stallone's final portrayal of John Rambo. From the selection of Julie Benz as the female lead to the careful casting of international actors who could bring authenticity to the Southeast Asian setting, every casting choice was deliberate and purposeful. The legacy factor. Stallone's return to Rambo. At the heart of the casting process was Sylvester Stallone himself, returning to a character he had last portrayed in 1988's Rambo 3. By 2008, Stallone was 61 years old, making his return to the physically demanding role of John Rambo a significant casting decision in itself. The 20-year gap between films meant that audiences would see a markedly older, more weathered Rambo, which actually served the story's themes of isolation and the lasting effects of war. Stallone's decision to return to the character was not taken lightly. The actor had experienced a career resurgence with 2006's Rocky Balboa, proving that he could successfully revisit his most famous characters while bringing new depth and relevance to their stories. This success gave him the confidence and industry support necessary to revive the Rambo franchise. The casting of Stallone as an older Rambo required careful consideration of the character's physical capabilities and emotional state. The script was written to accommodate an older protagonist, showing Rambo as someone who had been living quietly in Thailand, earning a living as a boat captain and snake handler. This setup allowed for a more contemplative version of the character while still providing the action sequences that audiences expected. Stallone's involvement as director, writer, and star meant that he had complete control over the casting process. This creative control allowed him to make casting decisions based not just on commercial considerations but on his vision for how each character would serve the overall narrative. His approach to casting was methodical and deeply personal, as he sought actors who could bring authenticity to roles that dealt with serious themes of war, humanitarian crisis, and moral responsibility. Julie Benz, the strategic female lead choice. The casting of Julie Benz as Sarah Miller, the female lead, represented one of the most crucial decisions in the film's casting process. Sylvester Stallone cast her as Sarah because he is a huge fan of her show, Dexter. This decision demonstrated Stallone's commitment to casting actors based on their proven ability to handle complex, morally ambiguous material. Benz, at the time, was best known for her work on television, particularly her roles in Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Dexter. Her casting represented a strategic choice to bring television credibility to the film, as television actors were increasingly recognized for their ability to develop nuanced, long-form character work. Stallone's appreciation for her work on Dexter, where she played the complex character of Rita Bennett, suggested he was looking for an actress who could bring emotional depth to what could have been a purely functional role. According to Variety, Julie Benz has been signed to star as the female lead in Sylvester Stallone's sequel John Rambo. The announcement of her casting came in May 2007, relatively early in the pre-production process, indicating that securing the right actress for this role was a priority for the filmmakers. The character of Sarah Miller was written as a Christian missionary and humanitarian aid worker, which required an actress who could convey both idealistic compassion and the strength necessary to survive in a war zone. Benz's previous work demonstrated her ability to portray characters who face extreme circumstances while maintaining their humanity and moral center. Benz stated that she had to get around 20 vaccinations before she could go to Southeast Asia to film Rambo, and that it was a very sweltering and exhausting film experience, although she is grateful that she did it, and that she had fun with it. This physical commitment to the role exemplified the dedication required from all cast members in bringing authenticity to the film's challenging Southeast Asian setting. The casting of Benz also represented a conscious decision to avoid casting a traditional action movie heroine. Instead of choosing an actress primarily known for physical roles, Stallone selected someone known for dramatic work, suggesting that the emotional and moral dimensions of the character were considered more important than action credentials. The mercenary team, building a multinational ensemble. One of the most complex aspects of casting Rambo, 2008, was assembling the team of mercenaries who would accompany Rambo on the rescue mission. This ensemble needed to represent different nationalities and military backgrounds while also providing distinct personality types that would create interesting character dynamics. Matthew Marsden as schoolboy. Matthew Marsden, born March 3, 1973, is an English actor, film producer, singer, and model. He has appeared in films such as Helen of Troy, Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid, Tamara, Resident Evil, Extinction, Straw Dogs, Transformers, Revenge of the Fallen, and Atlas Shrugged. He played Schoolboy in Rambo. Marsden's casting as Schoolboy brought British credibility to the mercenary team. His previous work in action films like Resident Evil, Extinction and Anacondas The hunt for the blood orchid demonstrated his comfort with the genre, while his background in various types of productions showed his versatility as an actor. The character of Schoolboy was written as a former Special Air Service (SAS) operative, and Marsden's English background made him a natural choice for the role. His casting added an international dimension to the team while also bringing a sense of military professionalism that contrasted with some of the more volatile characters in the group. Graham McTavish as Lewis. Graham McTavish's casting as Lewis brought Scottish intensity to the mercenary team. McTavish, who would later become well known for his roles in the Hobbit trilogy and Outlander, was at the time a respected character actor known for his ability to portray tough, no-nonsense military types. The character of Lewis was conceived as the team's heavy weapons specialist, and McTavish's imposing physical presence and ability to convey military competence made him an ideal choice for the role. His casting demonstrated the filmmaker's commitment to finding actors who could believably portray experienced soldiers rather than just generic action heroes. Paul Schultz as Burnett. Paul Schultz's casting as Burnett added American dramatic gravitas to the ensemble. Schultz, known for his work on television series like The Sopranos and 24, brought a different kind of intensity to the role. His background in dramatic television work aligned with Stallone's apparent preference for casting actors with strong dramatic credentials. The character of Burnett was written as a former U.S. Navy SEAL, and Schultz's ability to portray complex, morally ambiguous characters made him well-suited for a role that required both military credibility and emotional depth. His casting represented the film's commitment to exploring the psychological aspects of soldiers and mercenaries. Supporting cast members. The mercenary team was rounded out with several other carefully chosen actors, each bringing specific qualities to their roles. Ray Gallegos, Tim Kang, and Jake LaBotte were cast in supporting roles that added diversity and authenticity to the team composition. Tim Kang's casting was particularly significant as it added Asian American representation to the primarily Western mercenary team. Kang, who would later star in The Mentalist, brought television credibility and helped bridge the cultural gap between the Western mercenaries and the Southeast Asian setting. International casting, bringing authenticity to the Myanmar setting. One of the most challenging aspects of casting Rambo, 2008, was finding actors who could authentically portray the various Southeast Asian characters central to the story. The film's plot, which dealt with the real-world humanitarian crisis in Myanmar, required careful and respectful casting of local characters. Mong Mong Kin as Major Tint. The casting of Mong Mong Kin as Major Tint, the film's primary antagonist, was crucial to the film's authenticity. Finding an actor who could convincingly portray a Burmese military officer while also bringing the necessary menace to the role required extensive casting efforts. Mong Mong Kin's casting brought genuine Southeast Asian authenticity to the role, which was essential for a film dealing with real political situations in Myanmar. His performance needed to balance the requirements of an action movie villain with the sensitivity required when depicting real-world conflicts. Local and regional casting. The production's commitment to authenticity extended to casting many local and regional actors in supporting roles. This approach not only added authenticity to the film but also demonstrated respect for the cultures and peoples being portrayed. The casting process for these roles involved working with local casting directors and cultural consultants to ensure that the portrayals were respectful and accurate. This attention to detail in casting reflected Stallone's commitment to treating the serious subject matter with appropriate gravity. Ken Howard, the veteran presence. The casting of Ken Howard in a supporting role added Hollywood veteran presence to the film. Howard, a respected actor with decades of experience in film, television, and theater, brought gravitas and professionalism to the production. Howard's inclusion in the cast represented this film's connection to classic Hollywood while also providing mentorship and experience for the younger cast members. His casting demonstrated Stallone's respect for acting tradition and his desire to create a multi-generational cast. The casting process, challenges and logistics. The casting process for Rambo, 2008, faced several unique challenges that set it apart from typical action film casting. The film's Southeast Asian setting, combined with its serious subject matter and demanding physical requirements, created a complex set of casting criteria, physical demands and preparation. Benz stated that she had to get around 20 vaccinations before she could go to Southeast Asia to film Rambo, and that it was a very sweltering and exhausting film experience, highlighting the physical demands placed on the cast. The casting process needed to consider not only actors' suitability for their roles but also their ability to withstand the challenging filming conditions. The requirement for extensive vaccinations and preparation for filming in Thailand and Myanmar meant that cast members needed to be committed to the project well in advance of filming. This logistical challenge influenced casting decisions, as actors needed to demonstrate not only talent but also dedication to the demanding production schedule. Cultural sensitivity and authenticity. The film's setting and subject matter required careful attention to cultural sensitivity in casting. The production team worked to ensure that Southeast Asian characters were portrayed respectfully and authentically, which involved extensive consultation with cultural advisors and local casting professionals. This commitment to authenticity influenced every aspect of the casting process, from the selection of major antagonists to the casting of background performers. The filmmakers understood that the serious nature of the Myanmar humanitarian crisis demanded respectful and accurate representation. Balancing star power with authenticity. One of the central challenges in casting Rambo, 2008, was balancing the commercial need for recognizable actors with the artistic need for authentic portrayals. Stallone's approach seemed to prioritize authenticity and dramatic credibility over pure star power, as evidenced by his casting choices. The decision to cast relatively unknown or television-known actors in key roles demonstrated a commitment to finding the right actors for each part rather than simply assembling the biggest names possible. This approach reflected Stallone's confidence in his own star power to carry the film commercially. Technical casting considerations. The casting of Rambo, 2008, also involved several technical considerations that influenced the selection process. The film's action sequences, special effects requirements, and international production logistics all played roles in casting decisions. Stunt work and physical capabilities. The demanding action sequences in Rambo required cast members who could either perform their own stunts or work effectively with stunt doubles. The casting process evaluated actors' physical capabilities and their ability to make action sequences believable. Stallone's own commitment to performing many of his own stunts at age 61 set a high standard for the rest of the cast. This commitment influenced the casting process, as directors sought actors who shared this dedication to physical authenticity in their performances. International production requirements. The film's production in Thailand, with locations representing Myanmar, created unique casting challenges related to international filming. Cast members needed to be able to work internationally, obtain necessary visas and work permits, and adapt to foreign filming conditions. These logistical requirements influenced casting decisions throughout the process, as the production team needed to ensure that chosen actors could fulfill all the legal and practical requirements of international filming. The supporting ensemble, building a complete world beyond the principal cast. Rambo, 2008, required extensive supporting casting to create a believable world. This included military personnel, civilians, missionaries, and various background characters that would populate the film's Southeast Asian setting. Missionary group casting. The casting of the Christian missionary group the Rambo helps rescue required finding actors who could convincingly portray idealistic humanitarian workers. These roles needed to balance naivety about the dangers they faced with genuine commitment to their humanitarian mission. The casting process for these roles involved finding actors who could portray the complexity of real humanitarian workers, of people who are both admirable in their dedication and sometimes unrealistic about the dangers they face. Military and government officials. The film required extensive casting of military and government officials from various factions. These roles needed to accurately represent the complex political situation in Myanmar while also serving the film's narrative requirements. The casting process for these roles involved working with military advisors and regional experts to ensure accurate portrayal of military hierarchy and behavior. The impact of television on film casting. The casting of Rambo, 2008, reflected the changing landscape of actor recognition and credibility in the late 2000s. The inclusion of several television actors in key roles demonstrated the increasing recognition of television as a training ground for sophisticated dramatic work. The Dexter connection. Sylvester Stallone cast her as Sarah because he is a huge fan of her show, Dexter, illustrating how television work was increasingly influencing film casting decisions. The success of premium television series was beginning to change how film directors viewed television actors. This shift represented a broader change in the entertainment industry, where the line between television and film work was becoming increasingly blurred. Stallone's recognition of the quality of television drama influenced his casting approach throughout the film. Character development through television experience. The casting of television actors brought a different approach to character development. Television actors, accustomed to developing characters over multiple episodes or seasons, brought a different perspective to film roles. This television experience was particularly valuable in a film like Rambo, where characters needed to be established quickly but still feel fully developed. The television actors' experience with efficient character development served the film's pacing and narrative requirements. Budget considerations and casting strategy. The casting strategy for Rambo, 2008, was influenced by budgetary considerations that affected both the scale of star power the production could afford and the logistics of international filming. Star power versus production value. Stallone's star power allowed the production to invest more heavily in production values rather than additional star salaries. This strategic approach to casting enabled the film to achieve high production values while maintaining a reasonable budget. The decision to cast primarily television and character actors in supporting roles rather than major film stars allowed more of the budget to be devoted to action sequences, special effects, and international location filming. International production economics. Filming internationally created unique economic considerations for casting. The costs associated with bringing American and European actors to Southeast Asia needed to be balanced against the authenticity benefits of international production. The casting strategy needed to account for these additional costs while still achieving the creative goals of the production. This led to a careful balance of international stars and local talent. The casting legacy. Influence on future action films. The casting approach taken in Rambo, 2008, would influence subsequent action films, particularly those dealing with international conflicts and humanitarian themes. Television actor integration. The successful integration of television actors into major film roles in Rambo helped establish a precedent for future action films. The recognition that television actors could bring dramatic credibility to action roles influenced casting in subsequent films. This trend would continue and accelerate in the following years, as television continued to gain prestige and recognition for dramatic quality. International authenticity standards. The attention to authentic casting in international roles set new standards for action films dealing with real-world conflicts. The success of this approach influenced other productions to prioritize authenticity in their casting processes. This emphasis on authentic casting became particularly important as audiences became more aware of cultural sensitivity issues in film representation. Behind-the-scenes casting stories. The casting process for Rambo, 2008, involved numerous behind-the-scenes stories that illustrate the complexity and dedication involved in assembling the cast. Julie Benz's preparation process. Benz stated that she had to get around 20 vaccinations before she could go to Southeast Asia to film Rambo and that it was a very sweltering and exhausting film experience, although she is grateful that she did it, and that she had fun with it. This preparation process exemplified the dedication required from all cast members. The extensive preparation required for international filming became a bonding experience for the cast and helped establish the collaborative atmosphere that would be essential for the challenging shoot. Cultural consultation in casting. The casting process involved extensive consultation with cultural experts and regional specialists to ensure authentic and respectful representation. These consultations influenced not only casting decisions but also character development and performance approaches. This commitment to cultural accuracy extended throughout the casting process and influenced how actors prepared for and approached their roles. The final casting composition. Analyzing the ensemble. The final cast of Rambo, 2008, represented a carefully balanced ensemble that achieved multiple objectives simultaneously. The film co-stars Julie Benz, Paul Schultz, Matthew Marsden, Graham McTavish, Ray Gallegos, Tim Kang, Jake LaBotts, Wong Kin, and Ken Howard. Generational balance. The cast successfully balanced different generations of actors, from veteran Ken Howard to younger performers like Matthew Marsden. This generational diversity added depth to the ensemble and reflected the different experiences and perspectives of the characters. International representation. The multinational cast reflected the global scope of the story while providing authentic representation of the various cultures depicted in the film. This international casting approach added credibility to the film's portrayal of complex geopolitical situations. Genre experience integration. The cast combined actors with extensive action film experience with those primarily known for dramatic work. This combination brought both genre credibility and dramatic depth to the production. Conclusion. The casting achievement of Rambo, 2008. The casting of Rambo, 2008. Represents a significant achievement in action film casting, successfully balancing commercial requirements with artistic integrity and cultural sensitivity. Stallone's approach to casting demonstrated a mature understanding of how different types of actors could contribute to the overall effectiveness of the film. The decision to prioritize dramatic credibility over pure star power proved successful, as the cast was able to ground the film's action sequences in believable character relationships and emotional stakes. The integration of television actors demonstrated the evolving landscape of actor recognition and helped establish new standards for action film casting. The commitment to authentic international casting reflected the growing awareness of the importance of cultural sensitivity in depicting real-world conflicts. This approach not only served the artistic goals of the film but also demonstrated respect for the serious subject matter being addressed. The physical and logistical challenges of the production required exceptional dedication from all cast members, and the casting process successfully identified actors who could meet these demands while delivering compelling performances. The film is dedicated to the memory of Richard Crenna, who died in 2003. Crenna had played Colonel Sam Troutman in the previous films. This dedication served as a reminder of the franchise's history and the importance of honoring the legacy while moving forward with new cast members. The casting legacy of Rambo, 2008, continues to influence action filmmaking, particularly in its demonstration that television actors can successfully transition to major film roles and that authentic international casting can enhance rather than complicate action narratives. The film's casting approach proved that thoughtful, strategic casting could serve both commercial and artistic goals while respecting the serious themes and real-world issues at the heart of the story. As Stallone's final portrayal of John Rambo, the casting choices in this film represent not just the conclusion of the character's journey but also a mature approach to action filmmaking that prioritizes character development and cultural authenticity alongside spectacular action sequences. The success of these casting decisions validated the approach and established new standards for how action films could approach complex international stories with sensitivity and authenticity. The comprehensive casting approach taken in Rambo, 2008, demonstrates that even in the action genre, thoughtful casting decisions can elevate material and create more meaningful connections between audiences and characters. The film's casting legacy continues to influence how filmmakers approach international productions and the integration of television talent into major motion pictures. Rambo, 2008, a comprehensive analysis of Stallone's return to action introduction after a 20-year hiatus. Sylvester Stallone returned to one of his most iconic roles in 2008 with Rambo, the fourth installment in the action franchise that began with First Blood in 1982. Directed by Stallone himself, this film marked a brutal and unflinching return to the character of John Rambo, a Vietnam War veteran haunted by his past and driven by an uncompromising moral code. Set against the backdrop of the ongoing conflict in Myanmar, formerly Burma, the film served as both a continuation of the character's journey and a stark commentary on modern warfare and humanitarian crises. The 2008 film, officially titled simply Rambo, represented a significant departure from its immediate predecessor, Rambo 3, 1988, both in tone and thematic content, where the previous film had been criticized for its perceived political messaging and over-the-top action sequences. The fourth installment aimed for a more grounded, visceral approach to violence and conflict. Stallone, now in his early 60s, brought a weathered gravitas to the character that reflected both his own aging and the accumulated trauma of the character's experiences across 3 decades of cinema. The film's production journey was marked by numerous challenges, from securing financing for an R-rated action film starring an aging actor to navigating the complex political landscape surrounding Myanmar's military junta. The decision to set the story in Myanmar was particularly significant, as it brought attention to one of the world's most brutal ongoing conflicts while providing a contemporary context for Rambo's particular skill set and moral compass. Production development and pre-production. The journey to bring John Rambo back to the screen began in the early 2000s, though the project faced numerous obstacles before reaching fruition. Sylvester Stallone had long expressed interest in revisiting the character, particularly after the success of Rocky Balboa in 2006 demonstrated that audiences remain receptive to his aging action heroes. The development process was complicated by questions about the story's direction, the character's relevance in the post-9/11 world, and the commercial viability of an R-rated action film starring a sexagenarian actor. Initial script development began around 2005, with Stallone working alongside screenwriter Art Montarastelli to craft a story that would honor the character's legacy while addressing contemporary issues. The choice to set the film in Myanmar was driven by several factors, including Stallone's desire to highlight ongoing human rights abuses and his belief that the conflict provided an appropriate backdrop for Rambo's final mission. The decision reflected extensive research into various global conflicts, with the creative team ultimately settling on Myanmar due to the severity of the humanitarian crisis and the relatively limited Western media coverage of the situation. Pre-production faced significant challenges related to location scouting and political sensitivities. The Myanmar government's restrictions on foreign filmmakers meant that the production could not film within the country itself, necessitating the use of locations in Thailand that could convincingly double for Myanmar terrain. This decision created logistical complications but also provided access to refugees and activists who could provide authentic perspectives on the conflict. Casting decisions for the supporting roles proved crucial to the film's authenticity and emotional impact. Stallone sought actors who could bring credibility to their roles as aid workers, mercenaries, and soldiers. The casting of Julie Benz as Sarah Miller, the humanitarian aid worker whose capture drives the plot, was particularly important as her character needed to represent both Western idealism and genuine commitment to helping others. Graham McTavish's casting as Lewis, the leader of the mercenary team, brought theatrical training and physical presence to a role that required both authority and eventual vulnerability. The pre-production phase also involved extensive preparation for the film's action sequences, which Stallone envisioned as more brutal and realistic than those in previous installments. This approach required careful coordination with stunt coordinators and effects teams to create violence that felt visceral and consequential rather than cartoonish. The decision to use practical effects wherever possible stemmed from Stallone's belief that CGI violence lacked the impact necessary for the story's themes. Financial backing for the project came from New Image and Millennium Films, companies known for their willingness to finance mid-budget action films with established properties. The budget, estimated at around $50 million, was modest by contemporary action film standards but sufficient to realize Stallone's vision for a more intimate, character-driven story punctuated by intense action sequences. Filming principal photography for Rambo began in January 2007, with filming taking place primarily in Thailand. The choice of Thailand as the primary filming location provided both practical advantages and thematic authenticity, as the country borders Myanmar and has been home to numerous refugee camps housing those fleeing the conflict. Filming locations included areas near the Thai-Myanmar border, providing genuine backdrops of dense jungle terrain and rural villages that could convincingly represent the film's Myanmar setting. The production schedule was intensive, with Stallone serving as both director and star while maintaining the physical demands of the role. At 60 years old during filming, Stallone underwent rigorous physical preparation to maintain the character's imposing presence and credibility in action sequences. His training regimen included weightlifting, cardiovascular conditioning, and weapons training to ensure authenticity in combat scenes. Working conditions during filming were challenging due to the tropical climate, difficult terrain, and the remote nature of many locations. The cast and crew faced high temperatures, humidity, and the constant presence of insects and other wildlife. These conditions, while uncomfortable, contributed to the film's authentic jungle atmosphere and the palpable sense of danger that permeates many scenes. Stallone's directorial approach emphasized practical effects and real locations over studio work wherever possible. Action sequences were filmed using a combination of carefully choreographed stunt work, practical explosions, and detailed prosthetic effects to create the film's graphic violence. The director worked closely with cinematographer Glenn McPherson to develop a visual style that balanced the lush beauty of the jungle environment with the harsh brutality of the conflict. The film's most challenging sequences involved large-scale battle scenes featuring hundreds of extras representing various factions in the Myanmar conflict. These scenes required extensive coordination between the stunt team, effects crew, and local extras to create convincing warfare while maintaining safety standards. The production worked with local communities to hire extras and provide economic benefits to areas that had been affected by the real-world conflict. Stallone's performance as director was marked by his hands-on approach and attention to detail in both action sequences and quieter character moments. His experience as an actor informed his direction of the supporting cast, particularly in scenes requiring emotional depth and authenticity. The director encouraged improvisation and collaboration while maintaining his vision for the film's tone and pacing. The filming process also involved extensive use of weapons and military equipment, requiring coordination with arms specialists and military advisors to ensure accuracy and safety. The production featured a wide array of firearms, explosives, and military vehicles, all of which needed to be operated safely while creating convincing combat footage. Location shooting presented unique challenges in terms of logistics and equipment transport. Remote jungle locations required helicopter access for crew and equipment, while river sequences necessitated specialized boats and water safety personnel. These logistical complexities added to the production budget but were essential for achieving the authentic environments that Stallone considered crucial to the story. Post-production. The post-production phase of Rambo was extensive and crucial to achieving the film's visceral impact and thematic coherence. Editing duties were handled by Sean Albertson, working closely with Stallone to craft a narrative that balanced character development with intense action sequences. The editing process focused on creating a sense of escalating tension throughout the film while maintaining the pacing necessary for both intimate character moments and large-scale action scenes. One of the most significant challenges in post-production was achieving the appropriate level of graphic violence while maintaining the film's thematic integrity. Stallone was committed to presenting warfare and its consequences in an unflinching manner, believing that sanitized violence would undermine the film's message about the reality of conflict. This approach required careful consideration of how to present brutal imagery without crossing into gratuitous territory. Visual effects work was handled by multiple companies, with emphasis placed on enhancing practical effects rather than replacing them with digital alternatives. The visual effects team worked to augment explosions, enhance blood effects, and create digital muzzle flashes while maintaining the grounded, realistic aesthetic that Stallone desired. Computer-generated imagery was used sparingly and primarily for safety reasons in sequences that would have been too dangerous to film practically. Color grading and cinematographic post-production work focused on creating distinct visual tones for different parts of the film. The peaceful riverside sequences featuring Rambo's quiet life were given warmer, more saturated colors, while combat sequences were desaturated and given a grittier, more documentary-like appearance. This visual differentiation helped underscore the film's thematic contrasts between peace and violence. Sound design played a crucial role in creating the film's immersive combat sequences and jungle atmosphere. The sound team worked to create authentic weapon sounds, jungle ambience, and the chaotic audio landscape of warfare. Particular attention was paid to the sounds of different weapons systems, from small arms fire to explosive devices, ensuring that each had distinct and realistic audio signatures. The post-production process also involved extensive work on dialogue and ADR, automated dialogue replacement, due to the challenging recording conditions during location shooting. Much of the dialogue captured during filming in jungle and riverside locations required enhancement or replacement to ensure clarity and consistency. Digital intermediate work was performed to ensure consistent color timing and visual quality across different shooting conditions and locations. The DI process allowed for fine-tuning of the film's visual aesthetic and ensuring that footage shot under varying lighting conditions maintained visual coherence. The film's graphic content required careful consideration during the post-production process, as the filmmakers needed to balance their artistic vision with practical considerations regarding ratings and distribution. Multiple versions of certain sequences were prepared to accommodate different markets and rating requirements while preserving the director's intended impact. Music. The musical score for Rambo was composed by Brian Tyler, whose previous work included action films and television scores. Tyler's approach to scoring the film was influenced by both the franchise's musical legacy and the specific thematic requirements of the 2008 installment. The composer worked closely with Stallone to develop a musical palette that would honor the character's history while reflecting the mature, somber tone of this particular story. Tyler's score incorporated elements from Jerry Goldsmith's iconic themes from the earlier Rambo films while developing new musical ideas appropriate to the Myanmar setting and the film's more grounded approach to action. The composer employed a mixture of orchestral and ethnic instruments to create an authentic sense of place while maintaining the heroic musical traditions associated with the character. The main theme for the 2008 film builds upon Goldsmith's original Rambo theme while adding layers of complexity and emotional depth that reflect the character's accumulated experiences and the weight of his past actions. Tyler's arrangement emphasizes the melancholic aspects of the character while preserving the sense of determination and capability that defines Rambo. Ethnic instrumentation was incorporated throughout the score to provide authentic Southeast Asian musical colors. Tyler worked with musicologists and performers to ensure that the non-Western musical elements were respectfully and accurately represented, avoiding the stereotypical or cartoonish approaches that had marked some earlier action film scores set in exotic locations. The score's dynamic range was designed to complement the film's emotional journey from quiet contemplation to explosive action. Quiet sequences featuring Rambo's isolation and introspection are accompanied by sparse, contemplative musical arrangements, while action sequences feature full orchestral power with driving rhythms and heroic themes. Tyler's approach to scoring the film's violent sequences was particularly thoughtful, as he sought to avoid glorifying the brutality while still providing appropriate musical support for the action. The composer employed dissonant harmonies and harsh instrumental textures during the most brutal sequences to underscore the horror of warfare rather than celebrating it. The integration of the score with the film's sound design required careful coordination between Tyler and the sound team. Musical cues were crafted to work in conjunction with realistic sound effects and ambient noise, creating a cohesive audio landscape that supported the film's immersive qualities. Recording of the score was performed with a full orchestra, providing the rich, powerful sound that Tyler and Stallone felt was necessary to support the film's emotional and dramatic weight. The orchestral recordings were supplemented with synthesized and ethnic elements to create the complete musical palette. The score's role and character development was particularly important in establishing emotional connections between the audience and supporting characters. Musical themes were developed for key characters and relationships, helping to create emotional investment in characters who might otherwise serve purely functional roles in the narrative. Released theatrical. The theatrical release of Rambo represented a significant challenge for distributors, as the film needed to find its audience in a marketplace that had changed considerably since the previous installment 20 years earlier. Lionsgate handled domestic distribution, while international distribution was managed by various regional partners. The marketing campaign needed to appeal to both nostalgic fans of the franchise and younger audiences who might be unfamiliar with the character's history. The film's R rating presented both opportunities and challenges for theatrical release. While the mature rating limited the potential audience size, It also allowed for authentic marketing that emphasized the film's serious treatment of violence and conflict. Marketing materials highlighted both Stallone's return to his iconic role and the film's contemporary relevance, positioning it as both an action film and a commentary on international humanitarian crises. Pre-release screening and festival appearances were limited, as the film was positioned as a mainstream commercial release rather than an art film seeking critical acclaim. However, Stallone participated in numerous promotional interviews and appearances to generate awareness and explain his motivations for returning to the character after such an extended absence. The film's release date of January 25, 2008, was strategically chosen to avoid direct competition with major summer blockbusters while capitalizing on the typically lower competition of the early year release window. This timing allowed the film to establish itself without facing immediate pressure from other high-profile action films. International release patterns varied by region, with some markets receiving the film several weeks after the domestic release. Marketing approaches were adopted for different international markets, with particular sensitivity required in regions with their own ongoing conflicts or political sensitivities related to the film's themes. Theater count for the opening weekend was approximately 2,751 locations in the United States, representing a wide release strategy designed to maximize opening weekend revenue. The theater count reflected distributor confidence in the film's commercial potential while acknowledging the niche nature of R-rated action films starring older protagonists. Marketing partnerships included tie-ins with military and outdoor equipment manufacturers, as well as promotional appearances at military bases and veteran events. These partnerships reflected the film's themes while appealing to specific demographic groups likely to respond positively to the film's message and action content. The film's trailer and promotional materials emphasized both spectacle and substance, featuring dramatic action sequences while hinting at the film's serious treatment of real-world issues. The marketing campaign sought to differentiate the film from other action movies by emphasizing its grounding in actual international conflicts and humanitarian concerns. Regional marketing variations included different promotional emphases for international markets, with some regions focusing more heavily on the action elements while others emphasized the film's political and humanitarian themes. These variations reflected both cultural differences and varying levels of familiarity with the Rambo character and franchise history. Home media. The home media release of Rambo was crucial for the film's overall commercial success and long-term cultural impact. Released on DVD and Blu-ray on May 27, 2008. Approximately 4 months after the theatrical release, the home video version included extensive supplementary materials that provided deeper insight into the film's production and themes. The DVD release featured multiple viewing options, including both the theatrical version and an extended cut that included additional character development and action sequences. The extended version ran approximately 8 minutes longer than the theatrical cut and included scenes that provided additional context for both Rambo's character and the Myanmar conflict. Special features included comprehensive making-of documentaries that covered various aspects of production, from the initial script development through post-production. These documentaries featured interviews with Stallone, cast members, and crew, providing insight into the challenges of filming in remote locations and the philosophical approach to the material. A director's commentary track by Stallone provided detailed information about his vision for the film, his approach to directing action sequences, and his research into the Myanmar conflict. The commentary track was particularly valuable for understanding Stallone's evolution as both actor and filmmaker, as well as his commitment to treating serious subject matter with appropriate gravity. Behind-the-scenes footage included extensive coverage of the film's elaborate action sequences, demonstrating the practical effects work and stunt coordination that created the film's visceral combat scenes. This material was particularly appealing to action film enthusiasts interested in the technical aspects of filmmaking. The Blu-ray release featured enhanced high-definition presentation that showcased the film's jungle cinematography and detailed practical effects work. The superior video and audio quality of the Blu-ray format was particularly beneficial for a film that relied heavily on visual spectacle and immersive sound design. Additional special features included deleted scenes with optional commentary, providing insight into editorial decisions and alternative character moments that were ultimately removed from the final cut. These scenes offered additional character development and background information that enhanced understanding of both major and minor characters. International home media releases varied in their supplementary content, with some regions receiving additional features such as interviews with Myanmar refugees and humanitarian workers. These region-specific features reflected local interest in the film's political themes and real-world relevance. The film's home media performance was strong, with DVD and Blu-ray sales providing significant revenue beyond the theatrical release. The home video market was particularly important for recouping production costs and generating profit, as the film's R rating had limited its theatrical audience potential. Digital distribution became increasingly important following the initial physical media release, with the film becoming available through various video-on-demand platforms and digital purchase options. This expanded availability helped the film reach audiences who had missed the theatrical release or preferred digital viewing options. Reception box office. The box office performance of Rambo represented a qualified success, demonstrating both the enduring appeal of the character and the challenges facing R-rated action films in the contemporary marketplace. The film opened domestically with approximately $18.2 million during its opening weekend, which was considered solid given the January release date and mature rating restrictions. The opening weekend performance exceeded industry expectations for an R-rated film starring a 61-year-old actor in a franchise that had been dormant for 20 years. The weekend box office success was attributed to strong interest from both nostalgic fans of the character and action film enthusiasts attracted by the promise of intense, realistic combat sequences. Domestic theatrical gross ultimately reached approximately $42.7 million, representing a successful return on the film's modest $50 million production budget before marketing costs. The domestic performance was considered respectable for an R-rated action film, though it fell short of the blockbuster numbers achieved by some contemporary action franchises. International box office performance was significantly stronger than domestic results, with foreign markets generating approximately $70 million in theatrical revenue. The stronger international performance reflected both the global recognition of the Rambo character and the appeal of American action films in international markets. Total worldwide theatrical gross of approximately $113 million represented a solid commercial success that validated the decision to revive the franchise. The worldwide total was particularly impressive considering the film's mature rating and the advanced stage of its star, factors that typically limit commercial potential in the action genre. Week-by-week box office performance showed typical patterns for action films, with strong opening weekend performance followed by steady but declining attendance in subsequent weeks. The film demonstrated good holding power in its second and third weeks, suggesting positive audience reception and word-of-mouth recommendation. Regional box office variations were notable, with some international markets showing particularly strong response to the film's action content and political themes. Markets with experience of civil conflict or military intervention showed stronger attendance patterns, suggesting that the film's themes resonated with audiences familiar with such situations. The film's performance in IMAX and premium format theaters was limited due to the smaller number of such venues available in 2008. But attendance in these formats was strong where available. The enhanced presentation format was particularly effective for showcasing the film's jungle cinematography and action sequences. Comparison with other franchise revivals of the period showed Rambo's performance to be competitive, particularly given the constraints of its R rating and the age of its lead actor. The film's commercial success helped demonstrate the viability of reviving dormant action franchises with appropriate budgets and realistic expectations. The home video and subsequent digital sales significantly enhanced the film's overall commercial performance, with DVD and Blu-ray sales generating substantial additional revenue beyond the theatrical release. These ancillary markets were crucial for the film's overall profitability and long-term commercial success. Critical response. The critical reception of Rambo was notably divided, with responses ranging from praise for Stallone's committed performance and the film's visceral action sequences to criticism of its graphic violence and perceived simplistic political messaging. The mixed critical response reflected broader debates about the role of violence in cinema and the responsibility of filmmakers when depicting real-world conflicts. Many critics acknowledged Stallone's physical commitment to the role and his growth as a filmmaker, particularly in his direction of action sequences and his handling of the film's serious themes. Reviews frequently noted the stark difference between this installment and the more cartoonish elements of previous Rambo films, with critics appreciating the attempt to ground the character in realistic conflict situations. The film's graphic violence generated significant critical discussion, with some reviewers praising the unflinching depiction of warfare's brutality while others criticized what they perceived as excessive gore. Critics who supported the violent content argued that it served the film's anti-war message by refusing to sanitize the reality of armed conflict. Political aspects of the film received varied critical treatment, with some reviewers appreciating the attention brought to the Myanmar crisis while others criticized the film's perceived oversimplification of complex geopolitical issues. The debate reflected broader discussions about Hollywood's role in addressing international humanitarian crises. Performance criticism focused primarily on Stallone's portrayal of the aging warrior, with most critics acknowledging his physical preparation and emotional commitment to the role. Supporting cast performances received generally positive reviews, particularly Julie Benz's portrayal of the humanitarian aid worker and Graham McTavish's mercenary leader. Technical aspects of the film, including cinematography, sound design, and practical effects work, received generally positive critical attention. Critics frequently praised the authentic jungle atmosphere and the realistic portrayal of combat, even when they had reservations about the film's violence levels. Directorial criticism of Stallone's work was generally favorable, with many critics noting his improvement as a filmmaker since his previous directorial efforts. The pacing, visual composition, and action choreography received particular praise from critics who appreciated the film's technical competence. Thematic criticism varied widely, with some critics appreciating the film's attempt to address serious humanitarian issues while others felt that the action film format was inappropriate for such subject matter. This debate reflected broader discussions about the intersection of entertainment and political commentary in contemporary cinema. Comparison with other action films of the period was generally favorable, with critics noting that Rambo stood out from more generic action offerings through its commitment to realistic violence and serious themes. The film was frequently compared favorably to other franchise revivals of the era. International critical response varied by region, with critics in areas affected by similar conflicts often providing more favorable reviews than those in markets without direct experience of such situations. This geographical variation in critical response reflected the film's specific cultural and political relevance to different audiences. Long-term critical reassessment has generally been more favorable than initial reviews, with critics increasingly appreciating the film's serious approach to violence and its effectiveness as both an action film and a commentary on international humanitarian crises. This evolving critical perspective has enhanced the film's reputation within the action genre. Cultural impact and legacy. The 2008 Rambo film's cultural impact extended beyond its immediate commercial success, contributing to ongoing discussions about aging action heroes, the portrayal of violence in cinema, and Hollywood's engagement with international humanitarian crises. The film's approach to depicting graphic violence in service of anti-war themes influenced subsequent action films and contributed to debates about the relationships between entertainment and social commentary. Stallone's return to the character at age 61 helped establish a trend of aging action stars revisiting their iconic roles, contributing to the development of geriaction as a recognized subgenre. The film's success demonstrated that audiences remained interested in seeing established action heroes confront their mortality while maintaining their physical capabilities and moral certainties. The film's attention to the Myanmar conflict brought increased awareness to international audiences about the ongoing humanitarian crisis in that country. While critics debated the effectiveness and appropriateness of addressing such serious issues within an action film framework, The movie undeniably increased global discussion about Myanmar's military junta and human rights abuses. The portrayal of realistic violence in Rambo influenced subsequent action films to consider more carefully the consequences and moral implications of combat violence. The film's unflinching depiction of warfare's brutality contributed to a trend toward more grounded, realistic action sequences in later films, moving away from the cartoonish violence that had dominated the genre in previous decades. Technical innovations in practical effects and stunt work developed for the film influenced industry practices and demonstrated the continued viability of non-CGI action sequences. The film's commitment to practical effects helped maintain industry expertise in traditional stunt work and special effects techniques during a period of increasing reliance on digital effects. The film's approach to franchise revival provided a template for other dormant action properties, demonstrating that successful revivals required more than nostalgic appeal. The emphasis on contemporary relevance, mature themes, and acknowledgement of character aging became influential factors in subsequent franchise revival attempts. Educational and documentary uses of the film have included its incorporation into discussions about humanitarian intervention, the ethics of violence, and the portrayal of international conflicts in popular culture. Academic analysis of the film has contributed to film studies discourse about the evolution of action cinema and the intersection of entertainment and political commentary. The film's impact on Stallone's career was significant, re-establishing him as both a credible action star and a competent filmmaker capable of handling serious subject matter. This career rehabilitation contributed to his subsequent success with other franchise revivals and established his reputation as a filmmaker interested in exploring themes of aging, mortality, and moral responsibility. International political response to the film varied, with some governments appreciating the attention brought to humanitarian crises while others criticized Hollywood's intervention in complex geopolitical situations. These varied responses reflected broader debates about cultural influence and the role of entertainment media and international relations. The film's influence on video game and other media adaptations of the Rambo character was notable, with subsequent games and related media incorporating the more grounded, realistic approach to violence and the emphasis on moral complexity that characterized the 2008 film. Conclusion: Rambo, 2008, stands as a significant achievement in both the action film genre and the career of Sylvester Stallone, representing a mature, thoughtful approach to franchise revival that transcended mere nostalgic appeal. The film's success in balancing spectacular action sequences with serious thematic content demonstrated the continued viability of R-rated action cinema and the possibility of using popular entertainment to address real-world humanitarian crises. The production journey from development through theatrical and home media release revealed the challenges and opportunities facing contemporary action filmmaking, particularly when dealing with aging stars, international political sensitivities, and the commercial pressures of franchise revival. Stallone's dual role as star and director allowed for a unified creative vision that successfully honored the character's legacy while advancing both the narrative and thematic sophistication of the franchise. The film's technical achievements in practical effects, cinematography, and sound design created a visceral, immersive experience that effectively conveyed both the beauty and brutality of its jungle setting. The commitment to authentic locations and realistic violence served the film's anti-war themes while providing the spectacle expected by action film audiences. Critical and commercial reception demonstrated both the possibilities and limitations of serious-minded action filmmaking, with the film's graphic content and political themes generating debate about the appropriate boundaries of entertainment media. The generally positive audience response and solid commercial performance validated the artistic choices while confirming the continued appeal of the Rambo character. The film's cultural impact and lasting influence on the action genre, franchise revival strategies, and discussions of international humanitarian issues established its significance beyond mere commercial entertainment. The movie's approach to aging action heroes and realistic violence influenced subsequent films while contributing to ongoing debates about cinema's role in addressing serious contemporary issues. Ultimately, Rambo, 2008, succeeded in its primary goal of providing a worthy conclusion to the character's cinematic journey while demonstrating Stallone's growth as both an actor and filmmaker. The film's combination of spectacular action, serious themes, and technical competence created an action film that satisfied genre expectations while transcending typical limitations through its commitment to authenticity and emotional truth. The legacy of the 2008 Rambo continues to influence contemporary action cinema, serving as an example of how established franchises can be revitalized through mature storytelling, technical excellence, and genuine engagement with serious contemporary issues. The film stands as both an entertainment achievement and a cultural artifact that captures the intersection of popular cinema and international humanitarian concerns in the early 21st century. Review.1 In the 1980s and into the 1990s, one of the most durable genres in the American cinema was the big dumb fun action movie. Empty calorie exercises and elaborate set pieces and corny one-liners. We still have action movies, of course, and they're still big and dumb, but very few of them are any fun. I blame computers, at least a little bit, when every third shot contains a digital hero instead of a flesh and blood Chuck Norris, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Steven Seagal, etc. The result lacks a certain liveliness. Not to mention, computers have done away with the small, fun action scene. If it doesn't involve 12 locations and at least 2 speeding trains, it's not good enough anymore. Whatever the reason, and it's not just the rise of CGI. I know, action movies just aren't what they used to be. I bring this up on the release of the second film within a year to bring back the big dumb fun action movie, after Live Free or Die Hard brought one old franchise back for a much belated fourth entry. Sylvester Stallone's Rambo does the same thing to an action trilogy whose last entry was released nearly 20 years ago. Except, for a big dumb fun action movie, Rambo goes rather far out of its way to avoid being much fun. Of course, the cinematic adventures of John Rambo were always a bit too serious for their own good. First Blood, much the best of this series, indeed, the only good one of the bunch, was less an action film and more a drama about the disturbed Vietnam vet who can't deal with normal life and lashes out with violence at anyone who crosses him. Rambo, First Blood Part 2 was a self-conscious attempt to give moderates a psychological victory, and now Rambo 3 was at least partially a lesson about the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. While I'm thinking of it, I'd like to call attention for the way that none of the 4 films in the series have been titled the same way. Must be merry hell for the video store clerks. Anyway, the first 3 Rambo films were all semi-serious looks at the problems facing the world, mixed in with fantasies about how much better the world would be if the American military could just whop the hell out of our enemies, the Vietnamese, the Russians, leftists. The curious thing about Rambo is that, while it is still a hawkish wank about how the U.S. should poke our nose in everybody's business, it's specifically a call to American intervention in Burma. Burma? That's not, let us say, high on the list of places that average American filmgoer thinks about when the dinner table conversation turns to interventionism. So it's not, like the others, a bit of red meat for neocons. It's an attempt to educate the U.S. on the terrible state of a faraway country, and while I applaud the intent, a big dumb fun movie can't be dumb and won't be fun if it's actually meant to work as a political call to action. As such, it opens with a short montage of news footage, most of it British, documenting the atrocities committed by the Burmese government against the Karen rebels, a Christian community. Later on, the film depicts the savage destruction of a village full of farmers and missionaries, a sequence directed with considerable skill and exactly the correct amount of restraint. We see just enough of every violent act to make it clear what happened, and some of it is the stuff of nightmares, a baby thrown into a bonfire, for instance, but never does the camera linger over the blood and devastation. It's just about the best scene Stallone has ever directed, and a good sequence by any yardstick. Visceral and hard to forget. That hard to forget is the problem. Every Rambo film has to negotiate the same turn about 1/3 of the way through. How to go from a geopolitical piece to a blowing shit up good piece. In this first sequel, this is achieved by essentially resetting the whole plot. In the second sequel, this is achieved by having the first act make no sense at all, so that the audience has no preconceptions. In Rambo, The goal is clearly to negotiate that shift by changing the plot around. In Act 1, John Rambo, now living in seclusion in the jungles of Thailand, brings a group of prayer book-toting American Christians to Karen territory. In Act 2 he brings a group of mercenaries to Karen territory to rescue the Americans, in a government camp. But where Rambo, First Blood Part 2 and Rambo 3 use the real world as a pretext, Rambo has done such a bang-up job of convincing the audience that the situation in Burma is the closest thing to hell on earth. It's basically impossible to forget all that and enjoy the copious action that follows. The very brutal violence that opens the film casts a pall over the very movie fake violence that follows, which is a bit of a shame, because some of that fake violence isn't half bad, certainly better than the hectic and confusing finale of Rambo 3, and blessed with the escalating absurdity of a real 80s action picture. Particularly in the moment when Rambo explodes what is probably not a nuclear device, but which has the ability to level a couple square miles of forest. Fountains of the red stuff spew with satisfying regularity, and Stallone, though clearly older, has lost none of the skills that made him work in the role to begin with. Large muscles and a threatening monotone. It doesn't make the action look as effortless as the fourth Die Hard did. The CGI is obvious, but it's fun enough as a simple guilty pleasure, and perhaps the best straight-up mayhem the series has offered. What with the superior first film lacking much ultra-violence and the first sequel sputtering in between set pieces, but for all that, it's just too hard to get into it. The beginning of the film sets the wrong tone altogether. It's a guilty pleasure alright, and one that puts extra emphasis on the guilt. Maybe this was the point. Maybe Stallone was consciously working to point out the danger of rooting for movie violence in a violent world. But the last act doesn't read that way. It's as rousing as can be, with all the proper moments of death shot and edited to demand cheers and applause. It was just 13 months ago that Stallone brought another long-dormant franchise out of mothballs, turning in the best film in the series since the first. But the Rambo movies were never as good as the Rocky movies. And Rocky Balboa is an entirely different animal than Rambo, raising questions of aging and the very idea of reviving that which did not need revival. Rambo is just a big dumb action movie, and while it has the right ingredients to be good enough, it sabotages itself too much to click. It's much better than we had any right to expect, but a great Rambo movie is still faint praise. And Rambo leaves a taste much more sour than exhilarating. Review. To win the fourth part of the trilogy tradition which brought back the likes of Die Hard and Indiana Jones in the 2000s, this basic film by Sylvester Stallone revives the writer-director-star's other iconic character, after Rocky Balboa, who came back a year before, in an excessively violent comic book action movie with glum footnotes. It opens with news footages of the true life, appalling situation in Burma and a capsule summary of the 60-year struggle of the Karen people to survive virtual genocide. Though it's probably a good thing that this film put an under-publicized situation on the multiplex map. Stallone might remember that Rambo 3 made a similarly black-and-white statement about Afghanistan which plays awkwardly after subsequent developments in the region. There's also a sense that Stallone has scanned the headlines of the world searching for a conflict in which there really are appalling villains and suffering goodies who need a Rambo to buck them up. Shot and partially set in Thailand, there's even an echo of the many anti-Burmese films made in that country, Born to Fight, etc., though sadly, and despite a commitment to carnage which goes far beyond contemporary Hollywood, Stallone doesn't call in the stunt teams and effects people who have done so many astonishing and dangerous things in Tony Jaa movies. Necessarily as old as the star, 61, because of his anom backstory. Rambo wears a sleeveless t-shirt rather than bearing an oiled chest but has muscle-bound arms of Popeye proportions and a thicker neck than when we last saw him. He's slumped into peaceful retirement hunting snakes and running a small boat, but gets back in action first when medical missionary Sarah, Julie Benz, and her smugly obnoxious fiancé Tilda copyright Michael, Paul Schultz, need to be smuggled upriver on a regularly scheduled mercy mission to dispense doctoring and prayer books among the Christian Karens. Rambo kills some river pirates to save Sarah from gang rape and decapitation, but Michael still prattles that killing is never justified, which inevitably means he later, after much suffering, has to personally bludgeon a thug with a rock. The missionaries are captured by fiendish Burmese commander Tint Muan Muang Kine, whose depredations include forcing villagers to run through paddies seeded with bombs, extensively mortar bombing and machine gunning fleeing unarmed peasants, tolerating the mass rape of captive women by a roomful of jeering squatties and molesting a dear little boy and B. Kine is a former Karen rebel, who took this role in order to display his hate for the Burmese enemy, though the casting must have been a mixed blessing for him. A minister, Ken Howard, in one scene, hires Rambo to shepherd a boatload of mixed mercenaries on a rescue mission which, of course, he takes over, using his warbow, knife and the odd commandeered machine gun to slaughter hordes of uncharacterized villains for his old shtick of rescuing a few bedraggled survivors. In the old days, the mercs would all get killed to leave Rambo to fight alone, but here they tag along as part of the hero's team, going from jovial contempt of the boatman to macho admiration of his slaughtering skills. Instead of cavalry, other Karen rebels show up for the final battle, but the film's commitment to realism doesn't extend to showing any reprisals the oppressive regime might inflict after the story is over. Rambo gets a few of his trademark bursts of action, and Stallone wisely has the hero keep quiet as motor-mouthed mercs, including Brits Graham McTavish and Matthew Marsden, taunt him before they find out just what a warrior he is. But there is a tiny thread of sentiment as Sarah nags him about why he hasn't gone back to America after all these years in exile. A dream montage of snippets from the earlier films allows Richard Crenna's much-missed Colonel Troutman a voice here, and the last scene restages of the opening of First Blood with Rambo coming home to a never-before-mentioned father with an idyllic homestead. If this character was around, the whole plot of First Blood needn't have happened, though it'd have been a stronger finish if an unwelcoming sheriff were around to hassle the hero and start the whole cycle up again. Minimally plotted and maximally violent, this doesn't quite have the mood divination tone of First Blood and Rambo, First Blood, Part 2, but it's a stronger, less pretentious, more brutally efficient finish than Rambo 3. Now, could someone please do a tough, horrific, faithful adaptation of David Morrell's outstanding novel First Blood? That man was going to eat you, and I don't mean the euphemism for oral sex. Girl reporter Sadie Blake, Lucy Liu, happens across a story which she thinks involves a subculture of SM goth chicks being ritually slaughtered by a well-connected cult, but is pounced upon and extensively abused by suavely brutal vampire bishop, James Darcy, and his consort Eve, Carly Gugino. Raped, bled dry and dumped, Sadie wakes up in the morgue and realizes that Eve has turned her. After a disorienting spell on the street and at a homeless shelter, she learns to survive. Under the tutelage of a mysterious guru, Julio Oscar Mecazo, Sadie sets out to execute Bishop's coven with silver arrows, eventually teaming with drunken burned-out cop Clyde Rollins, Michael Chiklis, who wants revenge for the death of his daughter. Margot Harshman. Writer-director Sebastian Gutierrez opts to tell the simple story. Essentially, it's point-blank with vampires. Out of order, though not quite as unerically as John Borman did in his film of Point Blank. We pick up on an already transformed Sadie in the midst of her revenge spree, then intersperse the forward action with flashbacks that show how she got to this point. It's Los Angeles milieu, with luxury mansions and goth clubs, is slightly overfamiliar in the subgenre, but Gutierrez, perhaps influenced by the hunger and the addiction, presents an unusual take how these fangless blood drinkers have to use knives to open veins. Sadie picks up Eva's deadly crucifix necklace, and drench themselves in blood when they feed, are given to specious philosophizing about sex and murder, and are only marginally more resilient than regular humans. After so many films in which vampires have superpowers, it's refreshing that Sadie is badly, though not fatally, hurt by gunshots, can't break a pair of handcuffs and takes a beating from a martial arts proficient Renfield type, Mako. In slightly Tarantino mode, it brings on an odd array of guest stars for effective little bits of character byplay. Robert Forster as a guy who nearly picks up a hooker, Cameron Richardson, Sadie needs to bait the trap for a wheelchair-bound sleaze vamp, Alan Rich, Samara Armstrong as a girl who was too easily persuaded by Bishop's line of chat, Marilyn Manson as a bartender, snitch, Nick Lachey as a thug minion, and Eldon Hansen as a college boy geek who unwisely helps Bishop make an attempt to kidnap Sadie. I just wanted to hook up with goth girls who are into threesomes. He bleats, prompting her to sneer, what is it with you geeky guys and goth girls? Gugino, one of the most underrated actresses of her generation, is slinkily interesting as the ambiguous number 2 vamp who is the real trigger of the plot. Her acceptance of Sadie's justice also sets up Sadie's own desire to have Rollins kill her when her crusade is over, although there's the inevitable last-second reawakening back in the morgue in case a sequel is needed. Like a lot of vampire movies which refrain from using the V-word, at the expense of credibility, not to mention like a lot of vampires, it is slightly pompous about its pretty looks and badass attitudes, though it's more action-oriented than Octane or the wisdom of crocodiles. A hulking chicken is fine in the role of a drunken, vengeance-seeking cop, but even the character named Clyde Rollins sounds second-hand, and it's a toss-up as to whether Gutierrez is deploying archetypes or lazily cribbing from old movies and comic books. Still, among the better recent vampire films, this basic French exploitation movie is in the ever-sleazier line of plastic surgery-obsessed horrors from Le Yux Sans Visage via Circus of Horrors and Grittaz en La Noche to Corruption. It offers a Jean Rollin-like chateau setting. Indeed, I'd swear I've seen that castle in other films, inhabited by a couple of surreal thug dwarves in animal skins, Johnny Cocao and Roberto, a disfigured madwoman, Annie Dupuy, whose devoted artist husband, Philippe Lemaire, calls in plastic surgeon Dr. Romer, Howard Vernon, Franco's Dr. Orloff from Grittaz and La Noche, to sacrifice the skin of abducted girls to restore her former beauty, and, as a commercial necessity, regular contrived scenes of nudity and sexual abuse. The first transplant donor is groped and battered to death by the dwarves and therefore of no use, while a montage of potential source material consists of various pretty extras sunbathing, bathing or otherwise and is heavily told to copyright. The Anything Goes script extends to subplot business with poisonous plants, used for one near-incidental murder, a jealous high society villainess, Elizabeth Tier, who causes the accident in the first place. She turns up at her ex-lover's outdoor wedding reception and backs the new bride, who is wearing a flammable hooped gown, into a bonfire, but surprisingly gets off scot-free. Surely, she ought to be first on the list of unwilling donors. Some very perfunctory investigations on the part of the cops and the eventual heroine, Olivia Robin, a stab at a modern art milieu and one unusual idea at the transplant operation the maniac has pinned her hopes on really is unworkable, and the doctor hangs himself rather than go through with it. Dupuy, extraordinarily beautiful pre-mutilation, has an abrupt character change from saintly to monstrous with her accident, which makes for melodrama but cuts down on the moral complexity that works so well in Le Yux Sans Visage. The monstrous Anne also becomes a vague presence in this film, with blurry paw shots. The burning has affected her vision, close-ups of parts of her ravaged face, and the odd wheelchair-bound shadow standing in for her. This gothic reticence works reasonably well, since we never get a really good look at the state of her even when she peers in horror at her reflection. It's distorted and polished metal rather than clear. However, it also cheats an interesting actress out of a chance to make anything of the post-transformation character. We just hear spiteful voiceover, and see the odd black-draped hand, though Dupuy does take part in a Rollin-esque dream sequence that explores Anne's inner mind and gets round to a mild, mandatory lesbian cuddle. Made early in the sex horror cycle, it's almost comically awkward when it comes to incorporating the necessary nudity, with women finding excuses to doff their tops or get groped, even as writer-director Claude Mulot seems more interested in the old dark chateau-isms. My notes on Redacted, 2007, in his A Director's Statement, Brian De Palma admits Redacted tells essentially the same story as his Vietnam set Casualties of War. Obviously, he's profoundly depressed to have to go through it all again, as another innocent is raped and killed by American soldiers who have essentially invaded her homeland, and yet more would-be decent comrades are traumatized to discover what their platoon buddies are capable of. Based on an all-too-true story, It harks in style all the way back to De Palma's surveillance-obsessed 1968 State of the Nation feature Greetings, which features a Vietnam scene in which a soldier makes a local girl strip on camera, by assembling a collage of images culled from the video diary of eager Private Angel Salazar, Izzy Diaz, who hopes his footage will get him into film school. In a move which parallels Cloverfield, his camera passes into other hands late in the day. A deliberately arch and classically scored French documentary called Barrages, news clips from a fictional Arab TV station, YouTube-like postings from a range of websites, Islamic Jihadi, Soldier's Wife, anti-war ranter, security comm footage from a U.S. base in Samra, the recorded decapitation by insurgents of the luckless Salazar, in revenge for the rape, which he filmed but did not participate in, and videotaped debriefings, interviews and psychiatric counseling. By shooting on DV and working from his own script, De Palma rediscovers the underground approach of his earliest, pre-Hollywood, pre-genre films. If nothing else, Redacted is far more convincing and affecting than the slicker, conventionally made, stodgy and pompous casualties of war. However, like a surprising number of films which take this approach, De Palma fails to take into account the fact that recorded material becomes a part of the story aside from other considerations. All this footage is evidence, and in the real world this incident would have become more notorious than the crime which inspired the story simply because it was caught on video. The film doesn't deal with or even confirm what happens when or if Salazar's footage of the rape and murder, recorded on a helmet minicam his buddies don't know about, leaks out onto the internet or is used in a court of law. Similarly, security comm footage of the prime instigators, a wannabe gangster Reno Flake, Patrick Carroll, and chubby lech BB Rush, Daniel Stewart Sherman, discussing their deeds and threatening conscience-stricken NCO lawyer McCoy, Rob Devaney, ought to have been used against them. The film doesn't even tell us whether or how severely the villains are punished. The jury is also out on whether it's stereotyping or undeniably true to depict the two kill-crazy rapists as white trash clods. They ineptly machine gun a pregnant woman at the checkpoint, stupidly get Sergeant Sweet, Ty Jones, killed by playfully shoving him onto a dumped armchair containing an as he's lecturing them on safety precautions. They claim their subsequent raid is an attempt to avenge their buddy Sweet, who plainly hated them, and incoherently rant about the need to kill or be killed in the face of an overwhelmingly hostile population. Carroll and Sherman are frighteningly good in the roles, though. Meanwhile, the better-educated barracks intellectual Blix, Colonial, is archly reading John O'Hara's appointment in Samra. The humane lawyer, are we expected to believe that's a real name, takes the Michael J. Fox role, and the African-American Sweet is presented as more thoughtful, conscience-stricken and conscientious if equally stuck in an impossible situation. The eager, apparently innocent, puppy dog Salazar is actually the film's scariest character. He enables a terrible crime while intending to betray his comrades by using this footage to advance his own career. That's a real American, but also as De Palma could attest, a real director. Remember John Travolta using his lover's dying screams on the soundtrack of a cheap horror film in Blowout, but is killed before he can go through with it. There's also a near subliminal jab at the kind of people who want to make movies these days, and that Blix makes him admit he's never heard of Somerset Maugham, though he later reads out Maugham's A Death Speaks, the appointment in Samra anecdote Boris Karloff made much of in Targets, not realizing how perfectly tailored it is to the film he is making, since he shockingly gets to keep his own appointment. Given that this tells a story we've heard before about other wars in a contemporary, specific context, the movie has to make a political statement. The final montage of actual images from the Iraq War is itself redacted by blotted-up faces and, more blatantly, the inclusion of staged shots from this fiction. Maybe De Palma wants us to take the film's attitude to documentary to its logical conclusion and question this film itself. A simplistic reading of the film from U.S. conservative commentators, who have duly given it, is that it's an exercise in America bashing, but the range of characters and viewpoints complicates things. The ambitious but thoughtless Angel, the professional soldier Sweet, The agonized but humane McCoy and the hectoringly obnoxious Andy Wargoth chick who posts on the internet are as emblematically American as the maniacal party dude rape killers, and you sense that the old-day 1968 radical Inda Palma thinks the real villains of the story are the politicians, senior officers and buzziness folks who only register in the margins of the film because they are savvy enough to stay off camera when they're being evil. It's sometimes awkward in content and presentation, and hasn't got time to deal with the spectrum of Iraqi attitudes. We just get cartoon victims and jihadis, in the way it covers American positions. But Redacted is De Palma's most substantial work in some time, and sums the greetings, hi mom, casualties of war side of his filmography in the way the underrated femme fatale encapsulated his better-known psycho-thriller of Ra. Review. 3 So, thinking about the movie Rambo from 2008, it's really something, isn't it? This film, which some folks also know as Rambo 4 or even John Rambo, actually brought Sylvester Stallone back to a role that's pretty much legendary. After a bit of a break since the last one, this movie, truly found the former Green Beret deep in a very, very tough battle in Burma. It's a powerful, action-packed story that, in a way, shows a different side of the character we'd come to know over the years. It's interesting how this movie, released on January 25, 2008, picked up the story after Rambo 3. Which came out way back in 1988. That earlier film, Rambo 3, had a bit of a tough time with critics, so this 2008 version was, in some respects, a fresh start. Sylvester Stallone himself wasn't just starring in it, he also took on the roles of writing and directing, which is pretty amazing, honestly. He really poured his heart into this one, giving us a film that feels quite raw and, very direct. The story itself, it's rather intense, focusing on some truly difficult situations. It's an action film, yes, but it also touches on some serious issues, making it a thrilling and exciting watch for anyone who likes a bit of adventure. We'll explore what made this particular Rambo film stand out, its place within the whole series, and what audiences thought of it when it first hit the big screen. It's a film that, arguably, left a significant mark on the franchise and its fans. Table of contents. A troubled setting, Burma's saffron revolution. The backdrop for Rambo, 2008, is, quite stark and pulls from real-world events. The film places us right amidst the political protests of the saffron revolution in Burma, which, as a matter of fact, was a very significant time. In this setting, we see a ruthless SPDC officer, Major Pati Tint, who leads the Burmese Junta army forces. His actions are, to be honest, pretty horrifying, as he conducts a campaign of fear by pillaging small villages. It's a truly difficult situation, and the movie doesn't shy away from showing that. His soldiers, they act with terrible cruelty, sadistically slaughtering innocent people, which is just awful. They also abduct teenage boys, forcing them into the army, and hold women hostage, subjecting them to terrible acts. This depiction really drives home the kind of vicious army John Rambo finds himself up against. The film, really tries to show the brutal realities of what was happening there, making the stakes incredibly high for everyone involved. John Rambo's return to action in Thailand. John Rambo, who at this point is working as a Salween riverboatman, finds himself drawn back into conflict. When missionaries in Myanmar, which is, another name for Burma, disappear into the vast green inferno, he leaves his quiet job behind. He joins a group of mercenaries, accompanying them on a dangerous mission. This is where the story really gets going, as Rambo, still the vigilante Vietnam War veteran feels compelled to help. The fight continues, as the title sometimes suggests, and Rambo, quite literally, battles this vicious army in Burma. One of the rather clever moments in the film sees Rambo luring a section of the army into activating a dormant British Talboy bomb. This bomb, left lying in the forest, ends up killing his targets, which is a pretty intense way to deal with a threat. Eventually, though, Tint's soldiers manage to capture almost everyone, except for Rambo himself, along with Sarah and a character known as Schoolboy, played by Matthew Marsden. This situation, leaves Rambo in a very precarious position, forcing him to act decisively. The creative force, Sylvester Stallone's vision. Stallone's triple threat role is pretty remarkable, but Sylvester Stallone truly took the reins on Rambo, 2008. He not only starred in this film, reprising his famous role as the legendary Cold War and Vietnam veteran, but he also wrote and directed it. This triple threat role is, a clear sign of his dedication to the character and the story. It shows how much he wanted to shape this fourth Rambo film, bringing his own vision to the screen after a long break from the series. His involvement in writing the script meant he could really explore how John Rambo had changed over the years, and directing gave him the chance to make sure the action and the emotional weight of the story were exactly as he imagined. This level of control, arguably, helped give the film its distinct, gritty feel. It's not every day you see an actor take on so many crucial roles in a major action picture, which is, pretty cool. The evolution of John Rambo. Sylvester Stallone's depiction of Vietnam War veteran John Rambo has, in a way, seen quite an evolution across the films. From 1982's First Blood, where he was a troubled veteran just trying to find peace, to the Rambo, 2008, film, his character truly changes. By the time we get to this movie, he's a bit more hardened, perhaps more world-weary, but still driven by a deep sense of justice. Then, later, in 2019's Rambo, Last Blood, he transforms into an avenging father figure, which is, a big shift. The Rambo, 2008, film, in particular, shows Rambo as someone who has tried to step away from violence, yet is continually pulled back into it by the sheer brutality he witnesses. His journey from First Blood to this fourth installment is, basically, a testament to how a character can grow and adapt, yet still hold on to their core identity. It's really interesting to see how Stallone has kept the character relevant for nearly 40 years, which, is quite a feat. Key players and memorable moments. The cast bringing the story to life. Besides Sylvester Stallone, the Rambo, 2008, film features a cast that helps bring the intense story to life. Julie Benz, for instance, plays a significant role, adding a human element to the brutal conflict. Matthew Marsden, as mentioned, portrays Schoolboy, a character who gets caught up in the terrible events. Graham McTavish also appears, contributing to the group of mercenaries Rambo joins. These actors, really help to fill out the world of the film, giving Rambo people to protect and fight for. The performances, especially given the grim subject matter, are pretty impactful. They help to underscore the dangers faced by the missionaries and the local population in Burma. The interactions between Rambo and these characters, are often brief but very meaningful, showing the weight of the situation. It's a small but dedicated cast that, arguably, makes the story feel more immediate and personal. Intense sequences and lasting impressions. The Rambo, 2008, film is, to be honest, packed with action, as you'd expect from a Rambo movie. The combat scenes are, basically, quite graphic and relentless, reflecting the harsh reality of the conflict depicted. One moment that really stands out is when Rambo uses the dormant British Talboy bomb to eliminate a section of the army. That scene, is pretty explosive and shows Rambo's cunning and brutal effectiveness when pushed to the limit. It's a very memorable sequence, really. The film has a runtime of about 1 hour and 32 minutes, and it keeps the pace pretty high throughout. The user score it received suggests that audiences found it to be a thrilling and exciting experience. The way the film portrays the sadistic slaughter and the campaign of fear led by Major Potty Tint, it's, disturbing but also central to the story's impact. These intense moments, arguably, contribute to the film's reputation as a hard-hitting action picture that doesn't pull its punches. Rambo, 2008, in the franchise a new chapter after 2 decades. The Rambo, 2008, film marks a significant point in the franchise, as it was the 4th installment and the first Rambo film in 20 years. Since Rambo 3 came out in 1988, this long gap, really built up anticipation for fans. The film is also known by a few different titles, like Rambo 4, John Rambo, and sometimes even Rambo, The Fight Continues, which is pretty cool. It shows how much thought went into bringing the character back to the big screen after such a long time. Coming after the critical flop of Rambo 3, this 2008 entry had a bit of a challenge to overcome, but, in a way, it successfully reignited interest in the character, setting the stage for future films. It was a chance to revisit John Rambo with a fresh perspective, adapting him for a new era of action cinema. The fact that Sylvester Stallone took on so many roles in its creation really shows his commitment to making this return a memorable one, which, it truly was for many fans. The Rambo film series, a quick look. The Rambo 2008 film is, just one part of a larger American media franchise centered on the character of John J. Rambo. There are, basically, 5 films in total that follow his journey. It all started with First Blood in 1982, which introduced us to the troubled veteran. Then came Rambo, First Blood Part 2 in 1985, followed by Rambo 3 in 1988. After the 2008 film, the series continued with Rambo, Last Blood in 2019. This sequence of films, really shows the character's long and winding path. For anyone wanting to watch the whole story, there's a clear chronological order based on their release dates. From First Blood to Last Blood, you can pretty much follow John Rambo's evolution through nearly 40 years of cinema. Sylvester Stallone has, in fact, starred in all 5 of these movies, which is an incredible achievement for any actor. It's pretty easy to find where to stream all of them online today, which is, helpful for new viewers or those wanting to revisit the series. You can learn more about the Rambo saga on our site, and also check out this page for a deeper dive into the character's journey. Rambo Franchise Guide, Critical Reception and Box Office Performance. Opening day impact. When the Rambo 2008 film opened in theaters, it certainly made an impression. It debuted in 2,751 North American theaters on January 25, 2008. On its opening day alone, the film grossed a pretty significant amount, bringing in $6,490,000. Over its opening weekend, it continued to perform well, earning $18,200,000. These numbers, really show that there was a strong audience ready to see John Rambo back in action after such a long break. It was, basically, a solid start for the movie. The financial success on its opening weekend suggested that, despite the long gap and the previous film's reception, Rambo still held a lot of appeal for moviegoers. It demonstrated that the raw, action-packed approach Sylvester Stallone took with this installment resonated with the public. It's interesting to see how a film like this, which, is pretty intense and violent, could still draw such a crowd right out of the gate. It, in a way, proved that the character still had a lot of life left in him. Finding the film today. If you're looking to watch the Rambo 2008 film now, it's pretty accessible. You can easily discover showtimes if it's playing anywhere, or read reviews to get a sense of what people thought. There are also trailers available to watch if you want a quick preview of the action. You can find streaming options, which is, very convenient for watching it at home. Websites like MoviePhone, for instance, are great places to explore cast details and learn more about the movie. It's still a film that, arguably, holds its own in the action genre, even years later. As of early 2024, the film continues to be a popular choice for fans of the Rambo series and action movies in general. Its availability on various platforms means that its story, with its themes of human rights and brutal conflict, can still reach new audiences. So, whether you want to revisit it or watch it for the first time, finding where to watch Rambo 2008 is, basically, quite straightforward. It's a movie that, has maintained its presence in the world of action cinema. Common questions about Rambo 2008. Frequently asked questions. People often have questions about the Rambo 2008 film, especially given its intense nature and its place in the long-running series. Here are a few common ones that come up. Is the Rambo 2008 film based on real events. The film is set amidst the political protests of the Saffron Revolution in Burma and depicts the brutal actions of the Burmese junta army, led by Major Pa Tint. While the specific characters and John Rambo's involvement are fictional, the film draws inspiration from the very real and tragic human rights abuses that occurred in Burma, Myanmar. During that period, it aims to highlight the campaign of fear, the slaughter of innocents, the abduction of boys, and the holding of women hostage that, were part of the conflict there. Who directed and wrote the Rambo 2008 film? Sylvester Stallone took on the triple role of director, writer, and star for the Rambo 2008 film. He not only reprised his iconic role as John Rambo but also penned the script and helmed the production. This level of involvement, really allowed him to shape the film's gritty tone and intense action sequences exactly as he envisioned. It's pretty rare for an actor to have such complete creative control over a major action movie, which is, pretty impressive. How does Rambo 2008 fit into the overall Rambo movie series? The Rambo 2008 film is the fourth installment in the Rambo franchise. It serves as a direct sequel to Rambo 3, which was released in 1988, making it the first Rambo movie in 20 years. It comes after First Blood, 1982, and Rambo, First Blood Part 2, 1985. Following this film, the series continued with Rambo, Last Blood in 2019. So, in terms of chronology and release, it's, right there in the middle, a crucial part of John Rambo's long and evolving story. Wrapping things up about Rambo 2008, the Rambo 2008 film, also known as John Rambo or Rambo 4, really brought Sylvester Stallone's iconic character back to the forefront with a raw and intense story. Set against the harsh backdrop of Burma's Saffron Revolution, it shows John Rambo battling a truly vicious army, led by Major Pa Tint. The film, which Stallone himself wrote, directed, and starred in, definitely delivered on the action, with thrilling and exciting sequences, like the one involving the Tallboy bomb. It marked a significant return for the franchise after a long break, proving that Rambo's journey, from a troubled veteran to an avenging figure, still resonated with audiences. If you've not seen it, or want to revisit this powerful chapter, it's pretty easy to find streaming options today, which is, great for fans. Review. For Heroes Never Die. Just to reload, entire story and fewer words than are in this sentence. Aging slab of beef butchers filthy Asians, Americans rejoice. Homoeroticism. Sylvester Stallone is 61 years of age. A fit, rugged, manly 61. But not once does he oil his chest, puff up his loins, or caress the inner thighs of his enemy. Amazingly, the more he's aged on camera, the more we believe he prefers the company of the dames. That said, he's defiantly asexual in this long-awaited sequel, and he just might have fewer lines of dialogue than any lead character in cinema history. At long last, though, it's apparent that the genre has moved in its destined direction. As the heroes of the Reagan era age like fine wine, they struggle against impotence, incontinence, and sagging ass cheeks by killing even more people than ever before. Does an unsatisfied rod of steel seek death sting that much more? We'll have to wait for the Cobra sequel to be sure. Still, despite Stallone's uncharacteristic tucking away of the gay thing, the film manages to embrace a curious homophobia in the midst of its bloodletting. Rather than celebrate man-on-man action as the expression of the action hero, the lone overt example of queer power occurs on the bad side of the coin. The lip-smacking general, we know he's bad because he smokes and hides behind sunglasses, all with an insecure man's facial hair, invites a young male prisoner into his hut for an off-screen bout of Southeast Asian lovemaking. The variety that includes threats, screams, and intimidation, all in the face of potential gunfire. As the boy leaves later that evening, he is not limping, nor is blood shooting from his rear, so it's possible that the sadistic gave way to tenderness. Regardless, it speaks volumes that the most villainous lout in many a moon, he kills and kills and kills, and as a measure of his dehumanization, we learn nothing about him, is a limp-breasted faggot. Go figure. Americans leave the region, and John Wayne yields to John Waters. Corpse count, Holy Mother of Cock, 158 commies, along with 2 dogs and a fish, are cooked, fried, and sent to the grave in so many twisted ways that this entry immediately becomes one of the most satisfying action films in years. In truth, it just might stand with the champions of the 1980s, as the script makes no effort whatsoever to tell a story, create believable characters, or humanize its enemy. They say it's Burma, but get real, this is still Vietnam. Sure, there are lulls now and again, but as the film moves towards its inevitable conclusion, it becomes utterly impossible to keep up. And while most die by gunfire, there are frequent explosions that make an exact count tough at best. The LA Times suggests the count is closer to 236. Say perhaps we'll never know. How bad is it really? The screenplay is a fucking mess, but who on earth would stand for a more reflective Rambo? Stallone makes a pitch for the Republican base by having his crew of mercenaries, including the standard bald asshole, save a group of kidnapped Christian missionaries. But just when you think it might be a soapbox for Jesus, the biggest religious nut of the bunch smashes a man's head with a rock, and he likes it. Another Christian is mocked for thanking God for her rescue, while another missionary is literally crucified and fed to the pigs. This unexpected turn of the Jesus freaks are weak and cowering, and need old-fashioned muscle to save their simpering asses. Helps bring the film into the realm of the revolutionary, as Rambo's way out of gun aim makes a mockery of the Christian method of turning the other cheek. Improbably, then, the movie is inspiring, rioty, and far more entertaining than we had any right to expect. We want death, we get it, and even the tacked-on ending of Big John returning to his pawpaw spread in Arizona feels satisfying. Not only can we go home again, but we can sleep comfortably after butchering a large segment of a country we couldn't give 2 shits about. And hell, how bad can a Rambo movie be that has a flashback sequence reminiscent of Rocky IV? All the greatest moments from the series pass before our eyes, and John's tortured sleep, forcing us to our feet in rapturous applause. Chilling post-mortem one-liner, nothing directly follows death, but Stallone gives us a gem. When you're pushed, killing's as easy as breathing. Also, his life for nothing, or die for something is another slice of raw meat for the kids. Despite knowing that Rambo wouldn't know a cause if it fell into his lap, he ends life because it is the only thing he knows how to do, and he's simply looking for an excuse. There's another great retort to the silly Christian who thanks the Lord for saving her. God didn't save you, we did. Damn right. The world will never get better until we do more killing. After all, helping the poor never produced a single erection. Stupid political content, Burmese politics, a local civil war that involves the slaughter of innocents. I don't care. You don't care. And the movie sure as hell doesn't. Rambo is a Vietnam vet. Always was, always will be. An Asian is an Asian is an Asian, and for forcing the United States into the lost column, they will never be forgiven. And let's face it, Rambo is pushed to fight because of white womanhood, not some pussy like Jesus, and she's represented here in the body of Sarah, Julie Benz, a silly little girl who, despite her crushing naivete, is in danger of being raped by smaller, dirtier cocks. Think of the first killing spree. Rambo murders a boatload of Burmese pirates because they demand a woman. He would have let all the treasure go, but not the virginal princess of American purity. For Rambo, gooks can run markets, fashion killer spring rolls, and host snake fights, but stay the hell away from our women. We know Rambo means business, because we know he's not interested in the woman so much as wanting to keep her safe for upstanding young men on the home front. And we know that Sarah is being caged for later exploitation, and more than the rest of the Bible thumpers, she is the reason for Rambo's rush to justice. Still, the question remains, do we get to win this time? By sheer body count alone, a case can be made for the restoration of American manhood, prowess, and moral righteousness. And yes, even Rambo's return to the States could signify a victory over the past. All we needed was one last trip to the source of our passivity and cynicism. Dare I say it, I think we're back. Novelty death. It might be easier to list those that weren't novelties. Decapitations, eviscerations, mutilations, And the best people on fire defined this movie's 93 minutes, and each one of them went straight to the funny bone. And yes, we witness a good mix of guns, knives, and arrows. It's good to see that Rambo is still an expert with the bow after all these years, but it takes Rambo getting up close and personal to fully realize his powers. I mean, fuck Almighty, he literally tears out the man's throat. And then, by the end, he slashes the main bad guy so efficiently that his organs tumble to the rain-soaked ground. Oh, and the claymore. Didn't we have these things in Nam? And we didn't win. Why? Exactly. The high-powered weapon, used to set off an old bomb from cleared away brush, bodies, and a few pops. But more than that, a man on the cusp of social security ultra and a blast. And I believe every waking second of it. The bad guys also played ball this time around, as they had a game that involved forcing prisoners to run to the other end of a rice paddy while trying to avoid mines the military fucks had thrown in the shallow water. As with everything, the yellow bastards bet on the outcome. As heartless and callous as the contest is, there's no denying its cool factor. And let's not forget that children, yes, the wee ones, they are heartlessly sliced before our very eyes. What you learned: deny our enemies humanity, and we'll sign up for the slaughter. I know I